Okay, so
What are we doing?
we are going to do some no soak sowing of both broccoli and mustard and radish. So these seeds aren't soaked, and this is actually going to be a really quick and easy thing. So what we have here is pre-measured soil for two 10 by 10 trays. There's actually 4 trays here. You'll see why before we're done. This one's just here to hold these trays. So 4 10 by 10, some water, and a glove. First thing we got to do is hydrate the soil. So basically this doesn't take but a couple of minutes. You add some water to saturate. This soil is about 95% coconut fiber, and then has a small amount of fertilizer, perlite, and other soil things. So once you get some water in there, you literally just mix it up. You want it to be mostly full of water. You don't want it to be draining water and pooling underneath. If you have that much water, then that's really too much. Then it's really too much that you need for the tray. But if you oversaturate it, it's really not a big deal because you can squeeze water out of it really easily. So if you get too much water, you just squeeze out the water, dump it out, and get back to a saturated but not oversaturated state. So this is about how you want it. You can see the bottom of the bin here is wet with the water. Mix it all around. Give it, a minute to 5 minutes to soak, and then you're ready. So these are pre-measured out. This is about 20 grams of radish. This is about 4 or 5 grams of mustard and 17 or so grams of broccoli. These are very small. They're about the same size. They germinate about as quick as one another, so you can use them together pretty easily. And again, these aren't soaked because these seeds will germinate just fine without soaking because of the hydrated soil. So once you've got your soil mixed, we're going to grab a tray. Half of this soil is going to go in the tray. So you can actually do this pretty easily without making a big mess because the trays are so small.
Did you say how much is in there? How much soil is inside?
It's just pre-measured to fit the 10 by 10 tray, and it'll go about to the top, unpacked all the way around. But as you can see, it's not terribly hard to just keep all the soil in the tray. Carefully move it to the corners here. And we're going to flatten that out and spread it out before we put the seed on. So that's one tray. Move that to the side, grab another. Get the rest of our pre-measured soil. Put our bin to the side, and then we just push it around. You can actually use a lot less soil for broccoli, as it's a smaller microgreen. It actually does really well hydroponically. So if you're using soil, you don't need a whole lot. But the more soil you have, the easier it is to work with because it's not down in the tray. So the standard amount of just about an inch of soil in this 1.25 inch tray is what we want. So that's about all we need there. It's pretty flat, pretty level. And we'll do the same thing with this one. Pack it into the corners. The radish is going to have a lot of root activity. So by the time it's ready to harvest, that radish is going to have filled up every square inch of this soil with roots. You can literally lift up the microgreen and then you'll lift a sheet of soil and be looking at roots all underneath. It's kind of interesting, actually. So now that we've got 2 packed trays, I can loose the glove, and you really just want even seed distribution. It doesn't have to be perfect. if you get a little bit bunched up in one area, you can just move it around. Not too much around the sides, because during germination you're blacking these out and the sides get a little bit of light. So the majority of your seeds need to be evenly distributed around the center and the body of the tray, not so much on the sides. Don't worry, those roots will go to the side and take up all that soil space and pull nutrients from the soil. We're going to move our radish aside. We're going to sprinkle. Now the broccoli is a real dark seed, so you can't see it as well. Having a pretty well lit area helps. But again, you just want these evenly sprinkled about. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you don't want it bunched up in one area. Otherwise you'll have too much crowding of the plants and you'll get a really, really tight batch of greens. And it's hard to keep the moisture out of there and keep them from getting overly humid. And if you want the greens to be more or less dry, they're going to get wet when you water them, but you really just need the water in the soil. You don't need the greens to be wet all the time, otherwise you can have issues. Okay, we're actually going to leave a little bit out. I had a hair too much broccoli and mustard. So now we've got 2 trays, and the next step's really straightforward. You are simply going to mist the surface with water just to give the seeds a nice coat of moisture on them. And then you're going to put these guys on top and wait them. So let me grab my misting sprayer. If I can find it. All right, so nothing fancy here. We've got the sprayer. And see, the thing about it is you can actually soak these seeds. There's nothing wrong with soaking them. And if you are concerned about where the seeds come, you can sanitize them as well with a little bit of hydrogen peroxide mixture in the water. But that's not really necessary, and because these seeds are so small, it's very easy to keep them moist because we've hydrated the soil and because we're misting them. So we're just going to mist them.
Will the kit come with a bottle?
Haven't decided yet. I suppose that's something I can take feedback on if we want to include a bottle. Any bottle will work. Okay, and we've got our surfaces misted. Now I'm going to use this 10 by 20 tray to put them in, just because I only have to pick up one tray when I do that. And these 10 by 10s fit perfectly inside of the 10 by 20s. And from here, we take the second 10 by 10 tray and we literally just put it on top. What that does is it puts weight on the soil and the seed, pressing the misted seeds into the hydrated soil, keeps everything wet. And so basically this germination process here is where the seeds are going to get soaked. Once they begin to sprout, you can take this tray and turn it over and provide a blackout. You can continue to mist and make sure all the seeds are germinated, but I'm not going to go over that right now. That's kind of what happens next. But this is the sowing of the seeds. Once you get them all together, hydrated, you just press them down with some weight. You can use a book. You can use anything between 5 and 10 pounds per 10 by 10 tray. Obviously I'm using weights just because I have them laying around and that's easy. And then we're just going to put it on the shelf for about 2 or 3 days. All right, so it's been about 2.5 days, and we haven't really touched these. The only real movement has been taking it from the shelf to here. So we're going to take weight off and take a look, see what we have. So as you can see, we've got quite a lot of growth, and you can come in and take a look at this a little bit with the camera. We have our broccoli radish over, or sorry, broccoli mustard over here, mostly broccoli, and then radish over here. So all we're going to do, they're still pretty small. Radish is a little bit bigger than the broccoli, so you can see how it's bigger. But they're still pretty small, so we want a little bit more growth before we actually uncover them to the light. So what we're going to do now is just simply mist, a good misting. 1 time per day is usually sufficient. We're only going to go 1 or 2 more days before we uncover the blackout and get them under the light, and then it'll go very fast from there. So really all we're going to do is mist them. We're going to flip our 10 by 10 trays over, and you can take seed husks off either into the product or not, and reverse them. Try to be careful not to set your tray on top of little greens. I mean, if you do, you might damage some of them. You're going to get a little bit less if you damage them. But we didn't do a lot of seed planting around the edge for this purpose, so that we can flip these trays and create a humidity dome, a blackout situation without too much trouble. Let me give just a little bit more on this side. And see, there's a couple reasons why we did this with the weight. See, if we had just sprouted all these seeds on top of soil, what you would have had is roots going everywhere, seedlings going in all directions, and it would have been a mess. Some things wouldn't have got down in the soil, it wouldn't have stayed hydrated, you wouldn't have this nice growth and germination throughout all the seeds that have been planted. But because we weighted them and compressed it with the tray, the seedlings had to press up on the tray, and the roots were forced to grow down. So we get very well root penetration into the soil, and they get very well seeded to where we can have a great growth cycle moving forward. But that's it. So we're going to just mist them once per day. If you're in a really dry environment, you can mist twice a day. But they're going back on the shelf. All right, so it has been 24 hours, and things have changed a little bit. We now see that we have much more movement on the radish. Broccoli mustard is both a smaller microgreen, so these are not going to be as big as quickly. They'll take a little bit longer too, but these are ready to uncover and go under light for the first time. Now what'll happen next is you'll see them grow really quickly, and they'll also change from yellow to green really quickly because we're taking our blackout trays off. And you saw that they pushed them up quite a lot, and that's fine. The consistent pressure also helps to strengthen the stems and give you a little bit more uniform growth. So next I'm going to be putting them under a daylight fluorescent bulb, but you can really put them anywhere that's got a fair amount of light, not too much direct sunlight. So if you're putting them outside, you need shade cloth, or put them under a balcony, somewhere where there's some shade, nothing crazy. So that's about it. This is not a very large step because you're just going to take these off. I typically like to put them underneath just for simplicity, because when we're all done with this growth cycle, we're going to sanitize these trays before we reuse them.
That's good.
What we're working with here is just, I'm going to use one of my 2 4-foot long double fixtures just to save energy. I've only got 2 trays going right now. But as you can see, there's a fair amount of space in between, which it's fine, you could grow at this length, but I like to maximize the speed and also get a very uniform growth pattern out of all the greens, keeping them all the same height. And the further they are from the light, the more they'll reach for the light. So you'll get longer stems, kind of greens more going everywhere. So what I'm actually gonna do with this grow right now, I'm just gonna get them closer to the light. So I've got just a tub here to raise the distance. And then these guys are up higher. And that's it. So things are going to move really fast from here. You can get a better look at what things are looking like right now. Another thing to take note of is that these roots, they are fuzzy. And this can often be mistaken for mold. It's not uncommon, especially with radish and a couple others, to have very fuzzy roots. So learn to differentiate that. Don't let it catch you off guard. Don't be mistaken. So those are 2 different things. But now we're just going to let them soak up the light. Now it has been a few more days, about 4 I believe, since we uncovered these guys after germination. As you can see, the radish has grown quite a lot. The broccoli has grown quite a lot. And the radish stands up real tall until about the last day or day and a half. And then you see it start to kind of fan out and fall over as they're getting longer and heavier. This is a good indication that it's time to harvest. You can harvest a little bit before that if you want to, but this gives just a little bit extra growth and a little bit extra yield. But when they start falling over, that's about it. It's time to cut them and harvest them. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be harvesting the radish. Now the broccoli, I could harvest this now. Even though it's a smaller green, it is perfectly ready to harvest. Now, you can let broccoli go a little bit longer. It'll get a little bit bigger, not a lot bigger, just a little bit longer. The leaves will more or less stay the same. So once you stop getting growth on the leaves, you're not really getting any more greens, you're just getting more stem, which can increase the yield some, but it doesn't really give you a whole lot more of the tasty bit that you really like. I really like the greens part of the broccoli. And keep in mind, there is a little bit of mustard in here too. I don't like to let the mustard get really mature because it gets a little fuzzier, it gets a little harder. It's more tender if you harvest it at this mark. So I'll probably harvest these tomorrow. But I'm gonna do the demonstration on the radish. This is very straightforward. You can either use scissors or you can use a very sharp knife. I prefer the knife because I think you get a little bit cleaner cut than you do the scissors. So I'll show you both, but there's nothing very incredibly complex about this. All we're going to be doing is grabbing greens and cutting it. So just a clean cut, and we've got some greens. As you're going, you just want to be careful not to keep any roots in your yield. So, I mean, you might pull one out by accident. Well, that one broke off. Guess those roots are pretty strong. Nope, same. Anyway, you might pull one out. You might get some roots sticking out there. Just pinch that off or whatever. So that is how we harvest with the knife. You wash and repeat there. You're just going to continue, grab, cut, pull out, put it in a bin. All this is going to be washed before we eat it and then refrigerated, so that's about it. Scissors are not very much different. We're going to grab some. I guess you get a little bit more articulation with scissors if you're not used to a knife, but then we're going to just continue like this. Doesn't have to be perfect. but the more attention you pay to your harvesting, the better your yield's going to be, the better your product's going to be. You don't want to damage your greens too much, because then you're eating damaged greens. We want nice, pretty little cut greens. As you can see, the leaves, well, that's a broken one, but this guy here, real beautiful. Tender leaves. They're not wilted or cut up or damaged. They're strong, they're full. This is a great place to harvest. If you underwater these guys, they'll kind of get limpy. They'll wilt, fall over even more. You can get away with that a little bit, but if you let it happen too much, your product won't be the same. Now, the sunflowers do a little bit better at that, but radish, broccoli, you don't want to underhydrate them too much. But that's it. You just keep on doing this until you've got the whole tray harvested. Then you're gonna compost the soil and the roots, let that break down. You can use it for other things if you want, but you don't really reuse it for microgreens, just because the soil's changed once it's been used. Nutrients have been pulled out, root fiber's been added in. You can have a process for reuse on that, but it's more of a long-term thing. So we're gonna use fresh soil for the next batch. And that's it. So I'm gonna finish this.
I have big eyes.
Well, so I changed my mind and I went ahead and harvested the broccoli mustard combination. Mainly because I been eating sunflower for a while and I kind of want to have an omelet with that. So here we've got our radish, we've got our broccoli mustard. Trays are done. That could have been a little cleaner. This is all pretty good. This one had really good growth. It was really excellent. So that's all there is to it. Minimal mess. Now, I forgot, you really can rinse them however you like. I usually put them in a strainer first, then I'll move them to this spinner, which is just a normal vegetable spinner. I like this just because it's easy. You spin it around, it gets things nice and swung off. And then I pretty much bag it right after that. If you're gonna be storing it for a little bit longer, you can air dry it a little bit before you bag it. I spin it pretty good, so it's pretty dry in here. But if you wanted a little bit more shelf life, get a little bit drier and it will store a while longer. These will usually last 7, 8, 9 days in the fridge. I'm gonna use all of them before 7 or 8 days comes to pass. So there's no need for me to do excessive drying. They're pretty dry and it won't affect the flavor whatsoever. So, that's it. We're moving on.